And we will be in Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24. Throughout the coming weeks, we won't take as much time with our missionary letters, but we wanted to describe this to you. One thing that I started to try to micromanage it, and which I'm not one to micromanage, but I found myself, maybe we need to have this meeting. Could we meet once a month? Could we do this? Could we do that? And we all kind of decided that we're going to go one step at a time. And we felt like that if we read a letter, that maybe if there's a need or something that comes up that we pick up on in the information, then maybe it would justify us saying, okay, so let's meet this need. Tuesday night, we're going to get together, we're going to do this, you all bring this, and that, we'll put it together, we'll ship it to them, or whatever the case may be. We're going to let it happen naturally. And we'll grow with this, okay? We want it to grow, and we will grow with it. All right, Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24. We started this series a few weeks ago on as a tree grows, and I made reference to the fact of we laid the foundation with the cedars of Lebanon, how they were tall, magnificent, strong, beautiful trees. Trees that were some of the characteristics. They had a rich aroma, beautiful to look upon, very strong as far as their strength is concerned, able to endure. And so how do we become that in our lives as a Christian? We ought to have all of those characteristics. So what are some of the, I expressed earlier that when I first started this, I don't think it would be a very deep study. I wanted it to be a refreshing study, which I guess how deep is deep? That's up for interpretation. But we started looking at what are some of the elements, what are some of the things that are needed and in a regular natural tree that grows, and then making the application, so almost like an object lesson, then making the application spiritually in our lives. So if we're going to be this growing Christian that's going to reach new heights, then we need to have these elements. And so we dealt with life, the seedling that falls to the ground, and not all of those seedlings make it to a sapling, and so they need to have these resources such as the elements of water, elements of light. And then tonight we will look at heat. And I'm already depressed by looking at my weather app and seeing that we're going to lack a lot of heat in the coming week. And so when it gets down below zero, to me it is not fun. My wife she wants it to snow a whole bunch. And I keep fussing at her and telling her, no, honey, we don't need it to snow a whole bunch. I used to be the one to say, I want a huge snowstorm, and I do, but I want it to be 70 degrees the few days after, just really fall on us heavy and give you an excuse to stay home. None of us can go anywhere, and so you can just stay home and feel good about it. And she wants one of those, and she's all excited. Thought we were going to get one tomorrow, and I'm complaining and fussing and carrying on about it. And so I said, honey, no, we can't have this big snow because look at the next week. I said, it's going to be below zero, which means we're going to have to be looking at this for days and days. And so she texted me earlier this morning, and she's sad, and she says, because we've had this dialogue going on, and she wants snow, I want rain, and so she's expressing to me about all of this, and so she's all frown faces and everything, sending them to me, and now the weather says it's going to rain instead of snow, And so I put a smiley face back, and rain is better. And no, it's not, so we're being sarcastic with each other, back and forth, having fun. And then she said something, and I said, LOL. And she said, it's not funny. It's not funny. It is funny. What's not funny, honey, is that it's going to be below zero. That is not funny, okay? I agree. That is not funny. Okay, long way around. All of us, in order to, I'm going to add a word that I don't have in my notes, function, we have to have warmth to function. Do you shut down when it's below zero? Oh man, the joints don't work as well, and the muscles aren't as loose, and so. But the reality is, I'm being a little bit silly introducing all of this. But the truth is, these seasons that we go through, the rings on a tree, you look at them, and you got that little bitty narrow ring, and then the thicker ring, and that's because in the summer, once it gets above 40 degrees, then a tree grows more rapidly. But when it's 40 degrees or less, then everything is slowed down. And so in order to grow in the way that we should, there needs to be warmth. There needs to be heat. And so a tree has to have heat. And it has to be above 40 degrees. And but in order for it to grow, as we've been reading about, there needs to be the proper internal response. Christianity, we may have all of the elements in a church for somebody to grow. But if they don't respond, then they aren't going to grow properly. The elements can be there, but unless they are accepted and into their life and used, and they allowed themselves for this warmth, the heat, the water, all these different things we're going to be talking about, you're not going to grow in the proper way. And so only a healthy tree, this interesting statement, only the healthy trees are able to absorb the heat, the water, the sunshine, the air, all these different things we're going to be talking about. It takes a healthy tree in order to absorb it. A dead tree doesn't absorb water. A dead tree doesn't absorb the sunshine. It's of no value. It's to the point, a dead tree is to the point to where it's going to become firewood. And so it is no longer growing. And because it's not responsive, it doesn't have within itself the ability to be able to respond. I hate to say it in this way, but it's dead. And, so many times a Christian is not showing the fruit of being alive in their life. And many times it's because of the lack of response. And so in studying these things, I've done extra studies from my main source of study, and I've learned some things that are real interesting to me. For example, each leaf has 2 guard cells that either open or close in response to temperature change. And so, those of you, I don't know if we have many of you that are biologists. I know Brother Jones likes science, and he would be one that probably has looked at a leaf maybe under a microscope and the stem of a leaf. I don't know, just maybe taught it in biology class. And so every leaf. Remember last week we talked about what causes a leaf to turn, and when water hits it and light hits it, and we looked at all of that, how these cells elongate themselves, trying the shortest distance to get to the light, and they're responding to it, and it's just interesting. So to think that there are 2 cells in a leaf that open and close And as they respond to the warmth, as they respond to the light, as they respond to the elements that are around them. And so it allows this process that I didn't have it written down last week, but I have it in front of me, so hopefully I can say it a little bit better, photosynthesis. And so these elements and these cells and all of these things that are in flowers and leaves and trees, that is what the grass is, what is, so the rain, the sunshine, the air, the warmth, all of these things allows the plant world to come to life and to grow. And so a healthy tree, let me give you this statement, a healthy tree eagerly responds to warmth and allows the full flow of air to enter its stomata. Everybody knows what stomata is, right? Look, Brother Jones, you really do. And so stomata, some of you are saying, is that a hat? You know, I don't know what in the world is a stomata. So I'm reading this and I'm saying, I have no idea what stomata is. And so, but they have to know what they're talking about. They put it in a book, so it has to be true. And so I had to further research what is stomata. And the term stoma was used, S-T-O-M-A. Am I even saying it right? And so S-T-O-M-A. And so it's the prefix to stomach. So stoma is an opening, and an example, a stomach, an opening which receives or ingests for nutrition is what our stomach does. And so our mouth, I guess, could be a stoma. It's an opening. And our ears are a stoma, our nose, you know, and so it's an opening. And I said, well, this is somewhat intriguing. And so there's a word I'm sure I've read it, but I'm not real, to be honest, I'm not all that interested in trying to recall stomata. It's not a word I use every day in my life. And unless you're a teacher like Brother Jones, that's a word that you may hear once in your life, and it didn't have a whole lot of interest to me. But the more I read it, I said, this is intriguing. And so the word stomata then means, stomata are tiny openings or pores in the epidermis of leaves, stems, and other organs of plants. They allow for the exchange of gas between the plant tissues and the atmosphere. Stomata are essential for photosynthesis as they provide access to carbon dioxide. There's where our air is going to come in for next week. And stomata are regulated by guard cells that control the size of the stomatal opening. Stomata are generally more numerous on the underside of leaves. Guard cells work to control excessive water loss, closing on hot, dry, or windy days, and opening when conditions are more favorable for gas exchange. I thought, now, isn't that interesting? So what our eye doesn't see is when the light, the water, the warmth, when all of these elements begin to surround and to shed and influence these leaves, these little cells that we don't see with our eyes are opening up or closing down and saying, I'm going to open up when conditions are good, and when I sense warmth, I'm going to respond. I'm going to open up all of those cells when I sense that there's warmth. I'm going to open up to the sunshine. But when when the conditions aren't as well, they close down. Or if there's too much rain, they close down. And so the stomata is used in order to control how much the atmosphere influences and how it grows. And, you know, I read something like that and I think, what a great God we have. I have no idea that is happening when I look out my window and see the leaves in the springtime starting to grow, and to know that there's actual living cells on every one of those leaves that are responding to God's care. Now look, Brother Jones may be the only guy in this whole room that actually looks out his window and thinks that every morning. He probably stands there reading his Bible and praying and thinking, all those little cells, those stomatas, the little stomatas that are under the, I wonder if they name the little stomatas and the big stomatas. And you ought to write that could be a country song, I think, Brother Jones, about the stomatas. And so I'm just reading all of this. I'm saying, wow, this is so beyond me. I never thought of all of this. Now, biology class, sure. But the last time I took biology was in 7th grade, y'all. And so all of these different things that are happening in our bodies and as plant world and boy, you know, it just amazes me. And so comparison, our Christian life. How the plant world responds to warmth in comparison ought to be the same way that we respond to the warmth of God's love. On one side of God's nature, we have His holiness, His purity, His justice, His righteousness. One day His judgment. We have all of that. We have the law. But on the other side of God's nature, we have the compassion, His mercy, His tenderness, His love, His kindness. Kind of like the one leaf of cells on one side and the other, and the leaf curling up, these stomatas that are all running around that you didn't know about, all these things that are happening, responding to the influence by Him and through Him do all things consist, responding to God's care for them. And you think about it, wow, isn't that the way we're supposed to be in our life? On a daily basis, as we look at how God, these are the good things for us to go through a series like this to remind ourselves. Do we get up every day, or do we throughout the day think about how wonderful God is and how good He is? Do we honestly think about all the things that are happening that we aren't even aware of, but He has given us sunshine, He's given us warmth, He's given us water, He's given us, I mean, the list can go on and on about, you know, when somebody loves us, have you ever heard the term, oh, that warms my heart? Okay? In a sense, that's the love that God has given to us. It's when somebody loves us, they say something kind, they say something compassionate, and it says, "Oh, you know, that just warms my heart." Well, that's the same warmth that if we were to think about how good God is to us every day, I think our hearts would maybe be a little bit more warm. And if we take the time to think about that, we often in our busyness, I'm afraid we don't allow ourselves to be warmed in the way that we should. God just pours out His love to us on a daily basis. Probably things, unless we're purposely looking for it, that we don't think about it. And like stomatas. I'm going to think about it now. I don't know how long I'll think about it, but I'll think about it for a little while. And it's amazing how God has just put all of this together. I always thank the Lord for what I eat. Many times I'm thankful for the breath that I have. I'm thankful for my eyes. Thankful that I can hear. Don't hear as well as I'd like to hear. Even today, this afternoon, I'm reading over all of this again. I'm thankful for touch. You know, I'm still able to walk around. We're going to have Brother Taylor, and I'm going to be careful how I say this, We're going to have Brother Taylor be with us in a few weeks. And there was a day that Brother Taylor and I were in college together and ran around, played ball together, kicked a football with each other, threw the baseball back and forth with each other, put up tents with each other, went soul winning with each other, all these different things. And now when he comes, he'll always grab the shoulder of Brother Johnson. But now we have to say, no, don't bother him. He's got a bad shoulder. And so, but we don't just bounce up here on the platform like we used to. And he'll be very careful. And because he doesn't have feeling in his feet, he's fallen. He has fallen in places that embarrasses him. And, so today I was just thinking, Lord, thank you that I have feeling in my feet. I can walk and I don't jump out of the pickup truck like I used to. Some of you younger people, you grab the side of the bed and you just jump over, like a grasshopper or something. And not me now. I used to do that, but now I get to the end of the bed and I sit down and scoot myself off and try to make sure I don't hurt myself with that little step. I kind of fall off the back end of it, and so I'm thankful that I have feeling. Is if we would just allow the warmth of God on a daily basis, if we'd respond, if we'd acknowledge His love and respond to it, I think our hearts would be more warm. I've had you in Luke chapter 24, and I've gone about this a little differently than I normally do. I didn't even pray before we started reading because we haven't started reading yet. But look, if you would, at Luke chapter 24. Jesus had risen from the dead, and two of his disciples, followers, were following and talking. They didn't know who he was, and so Jesus began to teach them. Verse 27, and beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. They'd already told Jesus, because he said, why are you so sad? Why are your heart so heavy? And they expressed to him, are you not from this area? Do you not understand that Jesus, the one that we believed in, the one that, they crucified him and he's buried, and they're disturbed about all of this. And so he begins in verse 27 at Moses and all the prophets, and he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. And they drew nigh unto the village whither they went, and he made as though he would have gone further. But they constrained him, saying, abide with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is far spent. And he went in to tarry with them. And it came to pass, as he sat at meat with them, he took bread and blessed it, and brake and gave to them, and their eyes were opened. And they knew him not, and he vanished out of their sight. Verse 32. And they said one to another, did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way, and while he opened to us the scripture? Wow. I didn't even see this when I was writing all my notes. 5 minutes before I came out, I'm reading the scripture again, and I picked up, and the eyes were opened, and they knew him. They had a stomata in their eye. They were in an environment where they were around Christ, and their eyes opened because of the warmth, because of the love. And in doing so, their eyes were opened, and they said, wow, how did our hearts burn within us? It's because they've been with him and walked with him and talked with him. And they sensed his warmth and his love and his compassion. And in reality, that's Christianity. The love that he was given to them, they acknowledged it. And if we're going to grow in the way that we should acknowledge it. And we come like we did on Sunday morning in the choir that we're few in number, but yet sang a song that God used, and our hearts were warmed. And we acknowledged it, and we responded to it. And because we responded to it, we had another church service where we were able to grow. And that's this progression that God gives to all of us. Maybe somebody's heart was warmed a little more as they walked with Jesus this morning, and they have just been glowing throughout the whole day because their eyes and their senses and everything about them spiritually has been opened up, and then they enlonged themselves so that somebody else can be touched in order to be warmed by the love of a God, and even no greater love than this, that he even sent his Son to die for us. I mean, this thing of thinking about how much he loves us and provides for us and takes care of us, it ought to warm our heart. It ought to warm our heart. And in doing so, it's that warmth that helps us grow. People that don't live for the Lord for very long, or maybe even for a while, and they just get away from it, I'm convinced it's because they were within the elements and God was radiating his love on them, and they turned away from it. They walked out of a church service and they weren't warmed. They talked to a loving co-laborer, a friend, a family member, a church family member, that God put us all together. And you don't accept the love of somebody else? Boy, people that don't accept it into their life, they miss out. And the next thing you know, before you know it, they're shriveling away because they didn't open up when the warmth began to shine down, when the moisture began, no tears in their eyes anymore. We'll get into next week, no more the moving of the breath of God in our life. And so, because of that, if you aren't careful, and I didn't even get to all of my notes, but you know, there are a lot of people that know a lot about the things of God. Even, we could even say theologians, scholars, Pharisees, know a lot. They've been taught in the Scripture. But without the warmth and accepting that warmth, it's nothing but a bunch of knowledge. A bunch of knowledge. So what is a bunch of knowledge without the love, responding to the warm heart of a loving God who takes care of us enough to where we say, wow. Wow. That really warmed my heart. I just thought about this. We sometimes say, on fire for God. That's really being warmed up for the Lord, I guess. Yeah, it starts by responding to the love that God has given to us and not be frozen in our Christian life, and responding to all the ways that he shows his love to us. Well, I won't go back over my notes. I think I have a whole page that I didn't get to, but I think the main source got across of being a little bit silly about a stomata, but intriguing to me actually, and I study a little bit deeper and look at it. It's just intriguing how God created everything, and he created us. We don't understand everything in our bodies. Some of y'all do. We have a few people that work in the medical field, and Brother Allen being a dentist, and others of you. I mean, you know, some of you all, you understand some of those things more than the rest of us do, and so God is just an amazing individual. All right, well, I've said enough. Let's accept his warmth and allow our hearts to